What are the biggest mistakes business leaders make in pricing their products or services?
The biggest mistake is cost plus or Marxist pricing.
Where does the product pricing process begin?
Value and price must be balanced.
How do you know if you have priced your product correctly?
If everybody accepts your price, it's too low. If you lose too many sales, it's too high. So you should lose some, but not too many.
Welcome. My name is Daniel Droulet, and I'm the president of the Global Young Entrepreneur Society. The Global Young Entrepreneur Society is an international organization that supports exceptional young people in achieving their entrepreneurial ambitions. My guest today is Professor Hermann Simon, the founder and honorary chairman of Simon-Kucher Partners. Simon-Kucher Partners is the world's leading pricing consultancy firm with 45 offices in 30 countries. Before committing himself entirely to management consulting, Professor Simon was a professor of business administration and marketing at the universities of Mainz and Bielefeld. He was also a visiting professor at Harvard Business School, Stanford Graduate School of Business, London Business School, INSEAD, Keio University in Tokyo, and MIT. Professor Simon has published over 35 books in 27 languages, including the worldwide bestsellers, Hidden Champions and Power Pricing, as well as Managed for Profit, Not for Market Share. His latest books are Hidden Champions in the Chinese Century, True Profit, and his autobiography, Many Worlds, One Life, a journey from the farmhouse to the global stage. The Hermann Simon Business School in China is named after him. He coined the term hidden champions, companies that have become global market leaders in their respective industries, yet have remained unknown to the public. His Hidden Champions books have sold over 1 million copies in China alone. The Chinese government has called Professor Simon a management mastermind and has allocated a budget of $1.3 billion for a program that has the aim of creating 1,000 hidden champions. There are hidden champions research centers and institutes around the world. I am very pleased to welcome Professor Hermann Simon.
Daniel, I am looking forward to our discussion.
It's great to have you on. How did you start and scale Simon-Kucher Partners?
During my time as professor, we did small consulting projects on the side, but I learned that you cannot do that professionally out of the university. So I had a discussion with my doctoral students and assistants whether we should set up a separate company totally outside the university. And we did that. That's why the name is Simon-Kucher Partners. Dr. Eckhard Kutscher was my first doctoral student, and shortly after that, Karl-Heinz Sebastian joined us, and that was the starting team. We added in the first years 1, 2, 3 people to our team. And a decisive step was the entry into the company of 2 further doctoral students. And I show you a picture here, which is really, I would say, sensational. On the left side, you see me in the front and 4 doctoral students who joined Simon-Kucher Partners in the background. And the photo on the right side was taken 30 years later in 2017. It shows the same people, and all these people worked their whole life for Simon-Kucher Partners. They built this company. So it's all about people, about loyalty of people. They became partners, they became CEOs. Now they are retired. And I think that is the secret of the origin and the scaling up of Simon-Kucher Partners.
What aspects of Simon-Kucher led the founding team to stay at the company for so long?
We have a very entrepreneurial culture. In the early years, I decided that we would give shares to the younger partners. And today I have only a very, very small and minuscule share. and we have 150 partners. They all invest in the companies. They are all true entrepreneurs, and they have driven the growth. The typical story for most consulting companies is totally different. The founders keep as many shares as long as possible, and if the company is successful, the younger partners cannot acquire it. The company is sold to a larger corporation, loses its identity. And so I think the driver, the energy, is the entrepreneurial culture of our company.
What lessons did you learn from your entrepreneurial journey?
I learned a lot, the main lessons from the hidden champions. I studied these unknown mid-sized global market leaders, and there are three really important lessons. I call them the three strategic pillars of the hidden champion. The first is the ambition to be the best in your market, ideally worldwide. Ambition to be the best. How can you become the best? Only by focusing. So only focus leads to world class. But focus makes a market small. You said we are leader in price consulting, global leader, but that's a small market of the total management consulting market. So how do you make the market large? By globalizing. So ambition to be the best, focus, because only focus leads to world class, and globalization, which makes each market large enough for a mid-sized company.
What are the characteristics of a hidden champion?
The characteristics are that they one of the top three in their world markets. The revenue is less than 5 billion euros or dollars, and they are little known in the public. And that seems to be a contradiction. Normally, champions are well known, but these companies are not known because they operate behind the visible curtain in the economy. If you ask people, what is the economy about? Most people would say, yeah, big companies, big industries like automotive, mobile phones, and big airplanes, things like that. But the real economy is very different. It consists of thousands of markets, and most of these markets, 98%, are niche and small markets. Just to give you one example, everybody knows Apple. Many people have an Apple iPhone or a computer, but nobody knows how many suppliers are behind Apple. And Apple alone has 767 suppliers in Germany. Can you imagine that? These are the hidden champions. The companies which make the visible end product possible contribute to the value of this product, but are not known to the consumer and the general public.
Are hidden champions generally business to business?
Yes. About 70% are B2B, business to business, like these suppliers to Apple. About 19% are business to consumer, and about 11% are service companies, but mostly again for business to business services rather than for consumer services. So they're not in the mass markets of digitalization, but they are behind. Again, an example, you know Siri of Apple, you know Alexa of Amazon, but you don't know the software which is behind this. The software is called LSTM, that stands for long short-term memory. And this software is installed on more than 3 billion smartphones. And it comes from Germany and Switzerland. This is a service company, totally unknown, but used by more than 3 billion people, by half of mankind, practically.
How do you build a hidden champion?
You build a hidden champion by applying these three principles. First, the ambition to become the best in your market. This need not always be globally. I mean, in each city, you have the best restaurant or the best baker. So the ambition to become the best, and you focus. If you really focus on something and do it over years. For instance, I focused in my research on pricing, and I did it over years. You become rather good if you practice and focus over the years, but then you must combine it with hiring people. You cannot do it on your own. An artist like Picasso, he can acquire world fame on his own. But as a company, you need people, and you need loyal people who also focus, who stay with you and get more and more perfect over the years. So it's also a matter of endurance, of commitment, of the power to stay.
How do you get the idea for a hidden champion?
It can come from within yourself, that you have an idea, you are convinced, you are self-confident to do it, or it can come from the outside, that you see an opportunity in the market. And sometimes chance plays a role. In my case, for instance, I was as a postdoctoral fellow at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1979, and I visited Professor Philip Kotler, the global marketing guru. He was already the global guru at that time at Northwestern University. And I told him of my pricing research and said, I would like to have an impact, to make an impact on praxis. And he said, everybody wants that, but no academician achieves that, or very few. And then he said, I know a guy in Chicago who calls himself price consultant. So I said, price consultant, can you make your living from consulting on prices? So that was the spark which kind of ignited me. And then we, on our side, as I said, within the university, we started small projects. So you could say, without this spark provided by Kotler and the price consultant in Chicago, who I met sometime later, maybe it would not have happened. And of course, you're never certain. When we started, we never imagined that we would have 1,800 people now and 44 offices. We just opened an office in India and one in South Africa that will add the number actually to 45. So you have to start small, see whether it works, maybe make adjustments, but the idea must ideally come from yourself, but it must also have a need in the market. Otherwise, you are not economically successful.
When you were starting up Simon-Kucher, was there demand for your services?
That was a very small demand or market in the beginning, because there was no price consulting industry, you could say. I gave speeches, I published a lot of books, articles, and so companies approached me. And a very important market in our initial phase was the pharmaceutical market, which is still our biggest market today, because in the pharmaceutical market, for the first time, so-called generics appeared. These are products which are introduced after the patent protection of an original expires. And these generics attacked by much lower prices. And that was a problem to the original former patent holders. So they approached us and said, what should we do? Do we have to decrease our prices? Should we defend our prices? So it was a historic situation where from this industry, a demand for price advice developed and helped us a lot in the first 4 or 5 years. And later on, today we are in all industries: automotive, telecommunications, industrial products, services, banks. Inflation, of course, is a huge challenge for the pricing of companies.
There are significantly more hidden champions in German-speaking countries than in other countries. Can the conditions that led to the creation of so many hidden champions in German-speaking countries be replicated elsewhere?
Partially yes, partially not. Some of the roots are historical. For instance, Germany has not been a nation state until 1918. In 1918, we had 23 monarchies and 3 republics in Germany, whereas France, Japan, the UK, they have been nation states. So what did this mean for German entrepreneurs? If you were an entrepreneur in Munich and wanted to do business with Stuttgart, that was international business, because Munich was in the Kingdom of Bavaria and Stuttgart was in the Kingdom of Württemberg. And so that has become part of the DNA of German entrepreneurs. They go international very, very quickly. That cannot be replicated, but several aspects which can be replicated is, for instance, the German vocational training system. That's a pillar of the German qualification competitiveness, where we have a dual system. Apprentices work for 3 days in a company and attend a vocational training school for 2 days. So after 3 years, they have a very good combination of practical and theoretical combination. And for instance, China does that on large scale to replicate this system to educate qualified workers. Another aspect is what I call mental internationalization. Among the larger countries, Germany is the most mentally internationalized in terms of language capabilities. German people have been traveling all over the world for vacation, tourism, etc. And you need people who are willing to work abroad if you want to globalize. You have to send expatriates to other countries, etc. That can also be duplicated because it's an educational activity. So partially yes, partially not.
What do you need to break into a hidden champion market?
It's largely ultimately about the value of a product. And if there is an established an incumbent hidden champion, yeah, probably a technical breakthrough is the best way to become the new market leader. For instance, you are too young to remember what so-called optomechanical slide projectors were. Until 30 years ago, you had small slides and a special projector to project them on the screen. And this technology was replaced by the beamer technology. And the former global leader was displaced because the new technology was better and he was not able to master this technology. Okay, let me give you a more recent example. That's Rosen Group. Rosen Group is a global leader in pipeline inspection systems. For instance, they have inspected the Nord Stream pipeline, and they displaced the huge General Electric from the first rank in the world because they simply offer better service and better technology. So that is the best way to build a new hidden champion position.
Where does the product pricing process begin?
Ideally, it begins before the product is developed by understanding the customer needs and the value you should offer. And the key word here is value to customer. I've been asked thousands of times, what is the most important aspect of pricing? Always the same answer, value. And the old Romans understood that very well in their Latin language. They have the same word for value and price, namely pretium in Latin, like in precious. And that is the fundamental equation of pricing. Value and price must be balanced. And if your value is higher, you can charge a higher price. If your value is lower, you only can sell the product at lower price. So the core is value. Creating value with new products, understanding, communicating, and also retaining value. For instance, a second-hand Porsche is still very expensive. So people are willing to pay more for a new Porsche because they know the value lasts. When they sell it secondhand after 5 years, they still get 70 or 80%.
How do you know if you have priced your product correctly?
I would say the following, that's a little provocative. If you occasionally lose some contracts, if everybody accepts your price, it's too low. If you lose too many sales, it's too high. So you should lose some, but not too many. That gives you a feeling that you are about in the right range. If everybody accepts your price, it's too low.
What are the biggest mistakes business leaders make in pricing their products or services?
The biggest mistake, and that's a very frequent mistake, is cost plus pricing, or I call that Marxist pricing. Why Marxist pricing? The most famous theory of Karl Marx is the labor value theory, that value is created by the input of labor. And that's practically the same as you say that the costs define the value. And that is a big mistake. If you make the greatest steam engine today, it costs a lot of labor, but it has no value because nobody buys steam engines or steam locomotives. And so the biggest mistake is cost plus or Marxist pricing. And the most important aspect of pricing, as I said, is value to customer. There's no way to avoid that. You have to understand the value to customer to get your price right.
How should you react to competitors' prices?
Ideally, you anticipate the price moves of your competitors and take the competitive reaction into account before you set your own price. So if you attack your competitors by cutting your prices, you should be aware that they are very likely to react and that you may ignite a price war. And if the competitors start with certain price actions, try to understand what happens in the market. If right now in inflation, competitors increase your prices, it's probably good to follow. But if you have a cost advantage, you may not need to follow. So understanding what the effects of your competitors' actions are, and then adjusting your your own pricing accordingly.
We are seeing record high inflation. What is the best strategy to maintain profit margins while retaining customers?
There is no general strategy. It's a big mistake that you think you can only pass through your cost increases, because there you are again in the cost plus mentality and disregard the changes in the willingness to pay. So you have to understand the willingness to pay. And just to give you two examples, at Simon-Kucher, we just did a study on how consumers react to the new situation. And 54% say that they will pay more attention to prices, switch to lower priced products in the supermarket. But when it comes to vacation, only 18% say that. So vacation is sort of untouchable. There we still spend money, pay higher prices, whereas at the supermarket daily purchases, we pay a lot of attention to prices. So obviously, companies in the food sector have very different pricing conditions than companies in the tourism sector. After Corona, people want to go away for vacation and are willing to pay higher prices. For food and day-to-day products, consumers are not willing to pay higher prices. And that you have to understand.
The title of your latest Hidden Champions book is Hidden Champions in the Century of China. Do you think that entrepreneurship will be concentrated in China?
It will be everywhere. And one principle I describe in this book is that you have to find the best location for each activity wherever it is in the world. To give you a couple of examples, 2 German hidden champions in the mining sectors have set up their competence centers for mining technology in China. In Germany, we have no longer mining. In China, mining still plays a very role. So you can only be close to your customers if you are with the whole competence center, including research and development in China. Another hidden champion, they are just establishing a competence center for artificial intelligence in China, because they say there are better conditions to develop artificial intelligence product and processes in China. But it goes also in the other direction. All the Chinese automotive manufacturers have a design and development center in Germany, because they say Germany offers the best conditions to design cars, especially premium cars. And for some other activities, it's a Silicon Valley, or it's Hungary, or it's whatever country which offers the best conditions for these specific activities. And this principle has to be applied. So the Europeans must become Chinese with certain activities. If you have, for instance, the railroad business, the Chinese have by far the largest and best high-speed train system. If it's software, internet, America may be the best place. The general principle is find the best location for each activity in the world.
Where do you think there will be the most amount of innovation in the coming years?
It's very difficult to say. Because there is a tough competition. We will see more innovation coming from China than in the past. In year 2000, China was not among the top 10 in international patents. Today, it's number one, even ahead of the USA. But in the same way, we see that in biotechnology, in medical technology, the Americans are leading, the Israelis are very strong. And whereas it comes to factory automation, to the whole production, manufacturing value chain, Europeans or Germans are very strong. Also the Swedes, the Swiss. So from various industries, major innovations come from different regions. But we have also regions in the world which contribute little to the technical or innovative progress. We see very few innovations coming from Latin America, from Near and Middle East, or from Africa. So the innovative power is concentrated in three regions: the US, Europe, and China.
You came from the world of academia. Do you think that the quality of Chinese universities is catching up with the quality of American universities?
China is certainly catching up. We see that in the publications in leading journals, where the number of Chinese authors has dramatically increased, also in citation indexes. But it will be a long way to displace the top American universities. That's not a short-term process. That takes decades rather than a few years to build up the reputation. And of course, one question is, how will the Chinese political system affect that? Will that give enough freedom and liberty for academia to become world-class? I don't know the answer to that.
You co-founded the first SPAC listed on the German stock exchange. How was that experience?
This SPAC is a special concept, special purpose acquisition company. It's also sometimes called a blank check company. You collect money. We raised 200 million euros from various investors in Europe and America. You list this company in a public stock exchange, and then you acquire an industrial company and merge it with the listed company, so that the acquired company is immediately listed without going through the long-term process. And so we found a company called INSEAD Group, which we acquired, and it was then listed on Frankfurt Stock Exchange. And we are just reforming this company. It's a process which has become very popular recently in the US. In Germany, that was the first one. We did that in 2011. And in the meantime, we have many other SPACs in Germany as well. There were three partners, myself because of my access to hidden champions, and Roland Linau, who did public listings for Deutsche Bank former times, and then a French investment company called Wendel. And each of the three invested a certain amount to cover the startup costs and the transaction costs. And then the newly acquired investors became investors and shareholders in this company. The results until today are satisfying, not spectacular, but okay.
Do you think SPACs are the future of going public? Will they replace traditional IPOs?
I don't know. I mean, they have become very popular, but now it's declining again in the United States. I think for hidden champions, it's an easy way to get listed, but hidden champions are a problem in the public stock market, because they are so specialized and they're usually relatively small that they do not get much attention from analysts, from the press, etc. And very often the analysts or journalists even don't understand what these companies make. They cannot judge them. It's too deep in the value chain. So behind that is my more general opinion that the public market is not ideal for each kind of company. If the products are too complex, if it's a niche market, if journalists and analysts do not really understand what companies make, it's probably not ideal. Private ownership may be better in these cases.
Why are hidden champions highly secretive?
Traditionally, the hidden champions are very secretive, especially when it comes to research and development. So, for instance, many hidden champions do not allow Chinese visitors to their factories. That is changing, though, because products and systems are becoming more complex. We have now software, artificial intelligence coming together with machinery and engineering. And the hidden champions often cannot develop the necessary competence, so they have to cooperate with specialists, and that requires more openness. So I think they are less secretive today than they were 20 years ago. And that's absolutely necessary to become more open, to include, involve people with different knowledge and know-how.
What is the timeline for building a hidden champion?
The timeline is rather in decades than in years. Let me just give you an example. A very young hidden champion is a company called Typhoon Tofu. They make tofu from soybeans, a German company based in Freiburg in southern Germany. Tofu soybeans do not grow traditionally in Germany. So they developed a special soybean breed together with the Agricultural University of Stuttgart. And this development took 10 years. And now they are on the market. They can grow soybean in Germany. That's revolutionary. But you see, this is not a matter of quarters or years. It's a matter rather of decades.
Hidden champions are unknown. So as a hidden champion, how do you attract the best talent?
That's a disadvantage. Everything has several sides. The hidden champions are not known. They are not in the ranks of the most attractive companies. And my advice is most of them are based in small towns, even villages, not in the big cities, that they focus in their recruiting on the region. In the region, they are usually known and are attractive employers. In each region, you have talent. And if they focus on building a strong employer image in the region, they still can recruit competent top talent people. And sometimes things change. For instance, here in my region, where I am at home, I'm actually in my farmhouse today, where I was born. There was a company called Hermann Engineering, a hidden champion. They made systems for the assembly of microelectronic products. And they were also a supplier to Tesla, Elon Musk. And Elon Musk was so fascinated by them that he acquired the company. It's today called Tesla Automation. It's in a remote rural area. Today they are inundated with applications since they changed their name to Tesla. Before that, they had difficulties, and now they cannot employ all the people who want to work for them. The company is now called Tesla Automation.
How often is it that hidden champions have monopolies in their industry segments?
It depends on how you define a monopoly. If you say more than 50% global market share is a quasi-monopoly, that's a substantial part. On the average, the hidden champions have a global market share of about 40%. So they are the strongest competitor, and very often they cannot be replaced, especially in the current situation where you have bottleneck supply chain problems. So many of them don't have a formal monopoly, but they are very strong and cannot be substituted by competitors. For instance, I visited hundreds of factories in China, and in each case I asked, do you have Festo components in your factory? Festo is the global leader in pneumatics, which is a very important part of automation. The answer in the Chinese factory was in 100% of the cases, they had Festo components in their factory. So is that a monopoly? There are also other suppliers who make pneumatics, but Festo is everywhere.
How easy is it to compete with hidden champions? Do they become lazy over the decades, or do they remain agile?
Yeah, it's certainly not easy to compete with them. I look at the three major threats for hidden championship. Since most of these companies are family owned, succession is the biggest challenge. And if succession does not work, they don't have anybody in the family who can run these small, complex global companies, and they have the wrong successor, that is the biggest danger. That's why many hidden champions are changing to non-family members, managers. The second threat is technical breakthrough, as I described it with the beamer technology replacing optical mechanical slide projectors. If a new technology appears and you are not able to develop the competencies for this technology, that's a very, very, very serious danger. But we also see many cases where the former hidden champions have been able to make this transition. Let me give you two cases. Trumpf was the global leader in metal sheet cutting machines. These were so-called mechanical nibbling machines. And then in the 1980s, the lasers came into the game, and Trumpf developed their own lasers and are still the global leader in the now laser cutting, sheet metal cutting technology. Or look at Arri. Arri was the global leader in professional film cameras. These were cameras with 35 millimeter chemical film. And then digitalization came into the game. Arri developed their own digital film camera, and today they are still the leader in the digital professional filming business.
How common are mergers and acquisitions among hidden champions?
Not that common. When they happen, they are usually along the value chain. So for instance, Krones, which is today the global leader in bottling system, they started as a company which provided labeling machines for bottles where the labels were glued to the bottles. Today, they have a full line, and they acquired a couple of companies which were in this value lane, so that they can now provide the whole bottling factory with everything. That is typical for mergers and acquisitions. Rather, they do not go outside their own field with mergers and acquisitions.
How can you buy or invest in hidden champions?
10% are publicly listed, so you can invest. When selling occurs, it's usually combined with the succession problem, that they don't have a successor in the company and then they sell to a larger corporation or to another hidden champion. That's a typical event which happens.
Are there any advantages to investing in hidden champions compared to other companies?
In this sense, normal companies, they grow consistently. Their profitability is higher than average. But as I said, the public attention is not usually focused on them. So it depends. We have had some very big successes in the recent years. But in other cases, you have excellent companies, excellent products, but they do not create the hype which leads to an explosion of the stock price.
Which business books that had a major influence on you would you recommend for young entrepreneurs?
One of the best books I have read is The Memory of Peter Drucker. It's called Adventures of a Bystander. Peter Drucker was the leading management thinker of the 20th century. And in general, I can recommend biographies where you really follow the course, the development of a business leader. And of course, in this context, I would also recommend many worlds, one life, as a story of my own life as an entrepreneur. Reading biographies of successful entrepreneurs is very helpful and instructive for young people who aspire to become entrepreneurs. One very interesting one I read recently is by Horst Schulze. He is the best hotelier in the world. He created Ritz-Carlton. And the title of the book is Excellence Wins. How you can create a world-class service company. And the special challenge there is that the employees in the hotel business usually are relatively poor, get low salaries, and they have to deal with very rich people because Ritz-Carlton is a top hotel with high prices. And this is a recent biography which I read, Horst Schulze, Excellence Wins. Excellent.
General management books. Do you have any must-reads?
There are some very good books by Jim Collins, like Built to Last or From Good to Great, which are actually somewhat similar to my Hidden Champions books in the conclusions. So I would recommend them. There's also you could say, the all-time bestseller In Search of Excellence by Tom Peters and by Waterman, two former McKinsey guys. These are not recent books. They appeared In Search of Excellence appeared in the 1980s, and Jim Collins books later. They are very good books about how to do business to be successful.
We have come to the end of today's discussion, which I found very meaningful and thoroughly enjoyed. On behalf of the Global Young Entrepreneur Society, Professor Hermann Simon, thank you very much for speaking with me today.
Daniel, thank you, and my best wishes for the Global Young Entrepreneur Society. I will keep observing you, and please keep me posted. Thank you very much.